Greetings and felicitations.
Hip, hip, hurrah, tally-ho.
Hey, my little Georgia Peach.
Hey, Puddin'.
All right, let's talk about Breaking the Ice, Star Trek Enterprise episode. It was directed by Terry Wendell, written by Maria Jacquemetton and Andre Jacquemetton. Original air date, November 7th, 2001.
So in this one we have two storylines. They discover a comet, and Trip and Mayweather get to go actually take a shuttle to the comet and land on it and take samples, while we also have a Vulcan ship that's watching Enterprise, and they send a secret message to T'Pol, which Trip finds out about. So a pretty good episode with some more Vulcan intrigue, like the last episode, the Andorian incident.
And I prefer episodes with two storylines running, because of the fact you don't get dragged down by one storyline if it's not something that you're particularly interested in. And also, especially for a season, you want to find out more about the characters. So we're getting more character development about Mayweather and Reed, and also finding out how the crew, especially the command, upper command, is looking at T'Pol. So there's some uncomfortability here. Let's talk about the first aspect, though, of this comet. Apparently it's the largest comet that they've ever seen, to the point where you could even land on it and walk on the comet. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, the shuttle pod landed on it. And so it was full of ice, which is what we've heard about comets. Mm-hmm. And Mayweather builds a snowman, which was pretty funny.
I liked it. It gave some levity to the character. And so we know that Malcolm Reed is very much to himself. He's a private person, but given a chance, he has some levity. And I love the Malcolm moments. And Malcolm is just turning out to be one of my favorite characters on the show. I think one of the reasons, and this is one of the things growing up in an era pre-Next Generation, when we only had the original series, anytime that there was a book or a story about someone other than the Trinity of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, I was so interested in it, because I wanted to know about these characters that didn't get as much screen time, like Uhura and Sulu. And so I think Mayweather's like this too. I think this guy has done so much, and he still has that wonder and excitement. He wants to do more. He has just such a thirst for an adventure. And so to see them two work together, Mayweather and Reed, was a unique combination. And the idea of the Vulcans were watching them the entire time. We're still in an area where we're seeing they're not truly trusting the Vulcans entirely. And that bleeds into our secondary story.
I like the scene when they invited the Vulcan captain over, and so they're having dinner, and the Vulcan says, "What? He's not eating." He goes, "Well, I've already eaten," and he's just totally turned off by the whole thing. He doesn't want to be there, and he still looks down on humans.
We would, as humans, like just in like real world time, we would call people like this socially awkward. Like, there's just certain politenesses that you do around other people when you're invited to their home.
Well, we would say he's rude.
Rude, yeah, yeah, that's true. Entirely rude, or just there's certain niceties that you extend to others, even though it's not your first choice. And yeah, it's for a species that is based on logic, it is illogical to offend a host, or to not comply with the standards and the culture of that host.
So Vulcans really have a lot to learn at this point.
Yeah, there's no logic in acting that way.
I mean, Soval is the one that was supposed to be a diplomat. I mean, he's not in this one, but he may know more about these little niceties than the other Vulcans. And for Vanek, this might have been his first time seeing humans.
It's a thought. I haven't looked at that angle. Interesting. That's true. It was just.
But it was funny watching the scene. Mm-hmm. And then when they send the message to T'Pol, and Trip and Archer are talking about it, and when Trip translates it, and he says, "Oh well, I wish I hadn't read it," and
That's one of the things that you say, wow, they still don't truly trust T'Pol.
And then, yeah, I mean, that was a good point, just to say that that once Trip read the message, he was sorry he read it. And then they do say, like, why did the message have to be sent in secret? I mean, because if the Vulcan said, we have a message for T'Pol, well, the way Trip said it, like, well, if they had said it that way, it would have been okay. But I still think they would have been suspicious.
Correct. We do see still there's an underlying mistrust amongst Captain Archer and Trip of T'Pol. Because one of them could have said, hey, I have full faith in her. Let it go through. Drop it. I'm surprised that Captain Archer did not say that.
It's still, this is still an early first season episode. But when Trip finally does talk to T'Pol, well, of course, she invited him in to discuss it. And that was a good scene, too. This is the first time the two of them get to interact this way. I think it's his first time in her quarters. And they're talking about something personal to her. Mm-hmm. But he does it in a friendly way, let her know what he thinks about the situation. Like, well, you were engaged to this guy Koss when you were a child, and you haven't seen him since then. And he's just giving the human, actually American, we'll say, point of view.
Correct, yes.
That, you shouldn't really have any obligation. But, of course, the Vulcan way is different from that.
There's other cultures on Earth that still practice that.
Exactly.
And it works for them. That's the idea. Well, we know that the humans at this time still have a lot of prejudices. And they don't embrace IDIC. Trip has a lot to learn. I'm glad he felt awkward over this. He should. You got to think about it. When the space program was uniting with the United States and Russia, if something came up like this with either side, if they truly trust each other, what would they do? That's the way I look at it.
And it's also hard for other countries to trust each other too in our time.
Yes.
We get it.
So I could see it, but boy.
And also the fact that this is coming off of the Andorian incident, and because we just found out that Vulcans can't be trusted.
That's a good point.
And it wasn't even mentioned in this episode.
You're right. Right. And we watched these back to back, and I'm saying, yes, I didn't think about that. So. Yeah, I can now see why they both have reservations of, well, they might be hiding something. If the Vulcans were hiding something, even from T'Pol, might T'Pol be hiding something from us? All right, good point. So that actually makes sense more so why Trip and Archer had their reservations about this message. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. But what do you think how it was handled? With them should they have brought it to her attention that they knew? Or should they have just dropped it and said, well, don't say anything?
They could have just dropped it because, she wouldn't have known, and it would have saved a lot of embarrassment.
Of course.
So I think this storyline was actually the A story in this one. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it was... The part about the comet was probably supposed to be the A story.
Well, the title of it is based on the comet. That's why I consider the comet one the A one, just based on the title.
No, the title actually applies to both of them when you think about it. Breaking the ice literally on the comet, but breaking the ice metaphorically between humans and Vulcans.
Oh my God. This is why I love talking Star Trek with you. Like, how am I so thick-headed that I didn't see that? I was thinking literally breaking the ice, yeah.
Right. But yeah, so I do think the comet story was meant to be the A story, but that one really...
But this is an awkward way to break the ice amongst them.
It wasn't as interesting as the Vulcan
part. With the Vulcans over dinner.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and about Mayweather making the snowman, I think that because he grew up in space, he had probably never seen snow before. Mm-hmm. So that was something exciting to him. He had never made a snowman before like you have. I mean...
Oh, yeah. I remember the blizzard of 78. My mother still has pictures of us, and the snow was higher than we were, my brother and I. I mean, you want to talk about New England blizzards. It's just so extreme. Whereas you grew up in South Georgia. How often did you see snow?
I mean, I did see it every once in a while, but I only remember one time when I was real little actually trying to play in it, and I couldn't get it to pack very well, so I just gave up.
Yeah. But, oh, totally. So I could see that. I know that I had cousins from California, and that they would say, like, man, I just can't imagine this. This has to be awesome. Like, as you get in as an adult, you're like, this sucks. When you're a kid, you love it, but shoveling that stuff, oh, hell with that. But as a teenager, I made a lot of money shoveling sidewalks. So, I mean, there's good and bad out of it. But this is the first episode that we go into T'Pol's quarters. She has permission to light candles. Just like on a real ship, you can't light candles. You can't, even when you go on a cruise, they don't have flambés anymore. Baked Alaskas. They can't light fires on a ship.
Yeah, it's like that. But we have seen it, I think Tuvok did light candles, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So Vulcans are allowed.
I'm saying time-wise in the Star Trek, this is the first time we have a Vulcan on a ship.
Yes.
And so, right at the beginning, they're able to, bend some of the rules based on her belief system, which I think is fantastic.
She gets to do something that's part of her culture, and she knows how to be safe with it. And they probably do have a sprinkler system. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Pecan pie. I mean, that's a Southern classic. You grew up with pecan pie.
Yes, and that was very, very interesting that she decided to try a piece after already turning it down, but then after talking to Trip and seeing how, I guess how well he was able to talk to her, he impressed her enough that she decided to try something that he likes.
Yes. So we could say this is the beginning of the Trip T'Pol relationship.
And so the fact that the Enterprise and Archer, they did have to swallow their pride and let the Vulcans help them to get the shuttle pod out of the ice.
Yeah, and I like that. The use of the grappling hooks.
And that was a good effect too. This is something an example of how something when it's in what we call Star Trek's past, and so they're supposed to have less technology, but in our time we have more technology, because I think back when like when the original series was made, they couldn't have shown that visual effect as well using the grappling hooks. So now with the technology at the time of Enterprise, they can show that.
Yes,
and it was a very good effect. And showing one of the hooks actually missing, so they don't have the technology for perfect aim like they always did on all the other Star Trek shows.
You got to figure it's a moving object. It's got to be hard.
Yeah.
You have two moving objects going. Yeah, I could see that. And so we have to look at this. This is the first time we have an episode which does not have Rick Berman or Brandon Braga involved in the writing of it. So these two writers, I think, did a wonderful job for their debut on Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, it did turn out to be a pretty good episode, and it developed the characters farther a little bit. Oh, and the beginning scene where they were reading letters from kids in the 4th grade.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was funny. That was. Now you might think that scene kind of lasted a little long. I mean, like that might have been a little bit of filler for the episode. They asked a little too many questions and.
But I have to say that this is the type of thing, it gives us an idea of how excited people on Earth were about this. Because we grew up in the era that we were watching space shuttles. And that was just a wondrous thing. We started to know the names of various astronauts of the space shuttle programs. We look at the landing on the moon. Kids of that era were looking at those astronauts of absolute heroes. So we can see that this theme of kids just finding it absolutely amazing, the exploration of space, continues on hundreds of years later.
It is cool, and the way Archer, he seemed excited about it. I mean, and he wanted to answer their questions. He loved that the kids were so interested. Mm-hmm. And it is exactly the way kids now are interested in astronauts and in NASA and the space program. I guess what we would have to say nowadays is all of those questions, the kids could have just looked it up on the internet.
True. True, but having that personal response, and kids are always going to ask about poop. That's just what kids do.
Yes, yeah. and the grown-ups are going to be uncomfortable answering, too.
Mm-hmm. So this is the first time we do get an answer, though, about the recycling of it, which totally makes sense.
It gets recycled into different things, as Trip said, boots and other things.
Yeah.
Because nothing can be wasted there. They can't afford to waste anything there.
Yes. Yeah, and so I like that. You have that submarine feel. We think about in real-world submarines, like every little inch of space is used, and then every product is used. There is no waste whatsoever. So on so many levels, I really think this is a good episode. It's an underappreciated episode.
It is, but it was very interesting mostly because of the Vulcan storyline, and I do like how they developed the Vulcans more.
Totally. I give it a big thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.